Howdy Heroes Hearth, this is Kyle Fergusson. Today I'm sitting down again with SlugHunter, who's doing some more healing for us, this time on Lucio. This is from the Free Agent Finals, Peasants Anonymous vs IDK, Game 2. SlugHunter, thanks for joining me again.
No problem, man. Had a great time last time. Hopefully this will be the same.
Awesome. Well, you got a Lucio here, very, very busy hero. Something that was seen non-stop last CCL and kind of went into the background with a couple of high-five nerfs. How Lucio doing these days?
I think Lucio's slightly underrated right now, personally. I think he is still very strong. I think the nerfs are not as severe as people probably thought. But I think he's for sure still a good pick, especially into certain meta heroes right now.
Now, if I remember correctly, it was a pretty big hit to some of the high-five tomfoolery that was going on. In particular, that on arrival, allies were healed, or was it he was getting unstoppable on the way there?
It was, so they increased the cooldown, I think, and then they also lowered the self-healing on it. And I think the ally healing as well. Yeah.
So here on Tomb of the Spider Queen, seems like Lucio, pretty good pick for manning a 4-man. Did you, is there any like draft requirements you were thinking about here getting the Lucio, and where was it kind of picked up?
I want to say it was picked up decently early in the draft. I can't remember for sure, but I think they early picked Dahaka, which always makes me look at Lucio, because I think Lucio's really good pick into Dahaka, and I think they also picked a noob, and Lucio does well into both of those characters because he can disrupt them and isn't as vulnerable to being, taken out by them or kind of, jumped on by them.
Oh, interesting. I'm familiar with kind of the certainly the Mal'Ganis booping and interrupts that you can provide there, as well as like messing with ETC. How does he mess with a Nubarak?
It's less that he necessarily messes with a Nubarak, but that he's not as... A lot of healers struggle playing into a noob because he can very easily get onto them, very easily cocoon them, and they don't have much counterplay to it, or necessarily recourse. But Lucio, because of how fast he is much harder to hit, and can kind of move his team around and interrupt his, attempts at CC chaining post 10, or is just harder to cocoon in general as well.
Interesting, because he would then be able to recover from that cocoon position.
Not just that, it's hard to consistently be in range for cocoon, and also you can potentially high-five the cocoon so that you don't get cocooned. So you can high-five an ally as the projectile's coming to you sometimes.
Oh, jeez. Oh, okay, because I from Johanna experience, I don't think you can you cocoon a unstoppable Johanna?
No.
Okay.
If the target's unstoppable when the cocoon hits, you will not be cocooned.
Yeah, so you'd have to hit it midair. That's well, that's why you're playing in the big leagues, and we're not. So it's clear from the way you're moving, kind of the way you're positioning, even on this camp, that you're pretty familiar with where your walls are, and which walls are your favorites. Do you normally, from coming up from the bottom, use that center path then, because the wall access?
It depends on where the enemy team is, but sometimes I can. Sometimes if I'm not sure where the enemy team is, it's kind of hard to run through there. But for the most part, it's just whatever wall seems the most convenient at the time. I don't really have specific walls that I necessarily like more than others, or at least not one that I intentionally, go for more than others.
That seemed like a pretty big part of Lucio's kit there. So you've got this push-off ability, which came in, I want to say, maybe a year and a half ago. Pretty new still. Push-off, cooldown 20 seconds while moving alongside terrain. Activate to slide towards the target location. Enemies take damage and are slowed by 75% for 1 second. And that mixes here with your wall ride. While ride is active, Lucio can walk through units and gain 20% movement speed. So in that moment there, you were able to absolutely launch in front of a Nubarak and ruin his entire escape plan.
Yeah, adding that to Lucio was actually pretty big, as it does give him a way to very easily get behind a target if he's trying to boop them in, or just maneuver very fast when necessary.
Do you ever have trouble body blocking on Lucio, as he just wants to wall ride so badly that you...
Yeah, but as generally as a support, you're not trying to body block too much. Lucio is, he's not the squishiest support, but he's not like an Uther necessarily or a Charism that can kind of stand up front for as long.
That was a cool movement there, using the push off to navigate at full speed between that gap.
Yeah, it is very nice for rotations and potentially dealing with either being run down or trying to run down someone.
So what are you doing with your audio attack here? Because it's clearly not the biggest thing in the world. Are you just letting it lie wherever? Are you trying to hit heroes in particular, or are you actually helping with the clear?
There, I was mostly just going for heroes, mostly just trying to get, just trying to get some damage on Nubrak, maybe make him use some spells, because he can't really trade back into me in any way, because I should basically never be hit by any of his CC.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, and then the dive there for Gul'dan, that low mobility hero. You mentioned earlier that you have some counterplay versus Dahaka. What's that?
Early game, it's being able to boop whenever he tongues someone, I can just boop it, and then there's no more tongue.
Oh, really?
And then late game having
that, huh?
Huh?
A daze takes care of the tongue. I thought that'd have to be a full stun.
No. Just anything that kind of disrupts him. I think roots. Well, not roots, but like anything that creates any sort of CC like that generally will disrupt him. And post 10 high 5, he just can't really. It's hard for him to ever actually get a useful drag, because I should never be dragged, as long as also I'm not getting ISO'd either.
Would you then, in that sort of situation, someone's being dragged, you need to help them recover, would you switch to movement speed to get them out? Is there any hard and fast rules, or are you actually just making all choices on the fly?
It kind of can depend on comps. Comps that have more self-sustain, I can stay on move speed for a lot longer. And generally, the more you can stay on move speed, I think the better it is for Lucio, because you're very mobile, and then your team just becomes incredibly mobile. And even sometimes, you're almost healing or taking, because you end up taking less damage sometimes while you're moving fast, because you can dodge skill shots easier and can just generally outmaneuver your opponent. Sometimes it is, in a sense, more health to just be moving faster.
Yeah.
So it kind of depends on comps.
Particularly here against things that have like a windup like Gul'dan, or the aiming of something like Hanzo. And in particular, in that fight, there a lot happened, but man, they're looking real MVP out there. This is extremely impactful stuff.
Oh, thank you.
So tell me a little bit about your build as it's come together now here at 10. We got that high 5, which isn't as bad as others may be thinking. What sort of talents did you choose along that way?
So at level 1, there's the 3 talents. I mean, Accelerando is pretty much the only pick in like a normal game. It just makes your wall ride so much faster. I mean, it just doubles the speed after 4 seconds, or kind of speeds up over time.
Sure.
But allowing that, it makes you incredibly mobile, makes you so much harder to deal with. It also lets you get off the wall. It's easier to get back onto a wall before you lose the movement speed bonus. It just generally makes you like very hard to deal with. The other talents there, Smooth Moves has like potential with the 16 arguably, because I'll end up going CDR onto the amp. But for the most part, it's just generally not as useful. The healing's not very relevant, and the mana restored. I generally don't have mana issues on Lucio anyway.
Yeah.
And Party Mix is an ARAM talent to me. It's the talent I take in ARAM because it's fun and it's easy to complete then.
Very good. What about off the wall?
Huh?
What about off the wall at 4?
Oh, off the wall at 4? This is my default talent generally, because just having it up more is generally useful, especially here. If I ever use it, I generally want to have it up again, try to interrupt a Stukov puddle, but then there's also, a Dahaka tongue, or if I'm trying to boop someone into us, it's just generally useful to have, especially in combination with my 7. The other talents there aren't necessarily bad. I just think personally that this one's the best of them, but I know some people prefer other talents there.
Well, with how much wall ride time you're maintaining, and talking about how not only do you get the acceleration to 40%, but that helps you stay on a wall. Like Smooth Moves would almost be the training wheels for what you're doing, which is just getting to the walls more effectively in the first place.
It could be, yeah. I could see that.
Level 7, good vibrations. Hitting an enemy with a sound wave grants Lucio a shield. Well, that sounds frustrating. Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, it is a very good talent. I always go between this talent or reverse amp depending on the game. This game, I wanted to be more safe and be able to enable my team to just deal damage, so I wasn't worried about that and was just more worried about keeping myself alive. But reverse amp is also very good. Good vibrations. I like to take it into things that do pressure me. Like tracers have a decent time pressuring Lucio, but good vibrations, if I can boop like a tracer, generally it's a lot easier to deal with. But especially when I have to get close to like a Dahaka or a Stukov to try to interrupt their channels, I like having good vibrations for any damage that's put onto me.
So this is hitting an enemy hero grants 3 times this amount. It says hitting any enemy, so you could use this while running away, hit a minion wave perhaps, just to get a little bit of survivability.
You could, yeah.
Does it stack? If you hit multiple heroes, do you get big shields?
I'm honestly not 100% sure. I'm kind of saying yes, but it's worded like it would be no.
Yeah.
I actually can't remember off the top of my head.
No worries. There are inconsistencies with how those things work among talents and different heroes.
Yeah.
Level 13 altogether. For each ally affected by crossfade, Lucio gains 5% movement speed that stacks with other bonuses.
This is, I think, an underrated talent. I know a lot of people don't go this. Ever since Slip was nerfed and it gives the armor is only given when you're passing someone, I don't think it's really worth it as a talent anymore. So I think a lot of people just default to the push-off stun, which isn't bad, but I only really take that if I need to deal with like a hyper-mobile character like a Tracer or a Genji or something that's just hard to stun in general, because generally landing push-off isn't that difficult, even on those mobile targets. So altogether, I think it's just a really strong talent. You get a permanent 5% movement speed boost because it counts on Lucio.
Oh.
So you're just always 5% faster. So let's say you're if you're wall riding even without Accelerando, so if you don't have Accelerando, it's 20%. You have all together and you're moving next to one other person, you're at mount speed then. But if you have all his other speed talents as well, you're just incredibly fast and super tricky to catch. And it makes it a lot easier to also maneuver around, so you can high five easily without putting yourself into any dangerous positions.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Rightfully, you received the cocoon in that previous boss battle because you're just having such a huge impact on all these fights and dodging everything they're putting towards you. At 16, you grabbed up the frequency. Now, my information might be out of date, but isn't Rejuvenencia like required, or was?
It used to be. It
Okay.
used to be the old required one. It doesn't heal enough now. Maybe with some like super bruiser comps, it may be the pick. But up the frequency, increasing your auto range is actually pretty nice because you can dismount people easier and you can kind of harass. But just having your amp up more is really good. And I thought maybe this talent could end up causing mana issues, but as long as you're not spamming your amp, it's not really a big problem. But it's nice to just be able to have it up more. Increases your healing output a lot more, and whenever you want to speed, it's pretty much always up.
Yeah, we can see here in the UI that you have this additional range on you. It's pretty incredible. I didn't realize Amp It Up was 90 mana, so that's
Yeah, it is a
definitely
lot.
that's definitely your moment to sort of burn yourself dry of mana. It's just doing Amp It Up needlessly.
Yeah.
So a little bit of self-control there, no mana issues for Lucio. At this point in the game, you've started circumventing everything that they do. You're running out of range before even Fell Flames can get towards you. A couple of Hanzo-like lucky bounces have caused you to go a little low, but beyond that, it doesn't seem like much is threatening you. What are you afraid of at this point in the game? What are you watching out for?
Anubarak, I could definitely tell the Anubarak player was constantly trying to cocoon me, so I was trying to stay towards the edge of his range to keep him trying to run at me. And also, only other main thing I'm scared of is I can't ever get hit with Dragon Arrow, which would always be someone else. Preferably only one person, so I only have to burn one high five. But I should just, until some of their big cooldowns are used, I do have to stay back, and I can't really like run up and try to harass them too much. And then just like maybe a random Dahakatung from somewhere or isolation.
Interesting. So a lot like Zool or even Stitch's Gorge for some heroes like Mephisto. You're extremely aware of the cocoon range, and that's something you're constantly playing with. And you said even trying to bait his maybe right clicks to take him out of range.
Just trying to get him, like, there are certain points where I could tell he was trying to shoot the animation off, but I was just at the range. I could just jump out of it. And so it kind of ends up distracting the Nubarak player sometimes.
So for that kind of, I guess, mindset, play style, where are your eyeballs? We're seeing your camera here, so you're not using lock camera.
No.
Would you say healing your team becomes more kind of a passive background activity as you've learned more and more healers, and now your mind's more in the disruption sort of space?
Yeah, I would agree with that, especially healers I'm comfortable on, like Lucio, for sure. Healing kind of becomes second nature, and you can focus much more on your utility without losing too much.
That's just got to be raw practice time, but is there anything you did to sort of train that up, or even other games you played that made you good at this?
I mean, I played a lot of Lucio and Storm League in the past like 1.5 months because I wasn't good at the character. I did not consider myself good at the character at all. I knew I struggled a lot with wall riding and just in general uses of his amp and like which mode should I be on? Should I be on speed? Should I be on heal? And correct positioning for high five. So it was mostly just playing a lot and getting really used to it, getting used to harassing the enemy team as well, while also not putting yourself in too dangerous of a position is the main thing as well.
Yeah.
Because you always see like some of these really good Lucios who are just they're so annoying to deal with, and you can't touch them. They're always autoing you. They're always booping you, and it's like, oh, just go away.
And that's what you're aiming for.
Yeah, that's what you're aiming for. You want to be annoying. You want to be, because generally you're doing a good job then. Without, it should be worth it enough that you can't necessarily heal your whole team, but you're taking enough of the enemy attention away that your team can be self-sufficient.
Did you have a moral quandary becoming good at Lucio in that way? Like Malfurion almost feels like a respectable healer.
I mean, kind of to some degree. Something I've said for a long time, and I still kind of agree with to this day, is that I don't think Lucio is necessarily the healthiest for the game, design-wise, just because I think that movement speed boosts are very strong and are just, very good. But, I mean, he's not going away, and he's definitely very strong, so it's like, well, I do have to learn this. And he is fun to play, for sure.
Sure.
Especially once you get used to him.
And at that point, you can be the gentleman by basically saying, I'm so good, please ban this, and then none of us have to deal with this, please. So
yeah, that can work.
You're taking a ban, you're doing it for your team. It's quite the sacrifice you're doing there. Great job on you. You got level 10 here, or level 20 here, mixing fire. You can now, slap enemies, giving them high fives. Yeah. Now, this reduces healing by 50%, reduces the cost and cooldown of high five by 30%. How do you use this?
So the main portion of this talent that I like is the cooldown decrease. It's about 6 seconds off of it. So it goes from 20 seconds to 14 seconds, which is pretty useful. And occasionally, you can use it on enemies, but especially since they took the unstoppable off of using it on enemies, it's like, okay, I'm mainly going to use it on allies for the most part. But just having the cooldown decrease is just very useful for it. The other talents at the tier aren't bad. I mean, if you go Sound Barrier, which I don't think we talked about alts, but I think Sound Barrier can still be good in some situations against especially like heavy wombo teams that aren't necessarily super CC reliant. Or just teams that are, have big alts. Like both of Malthael's alts are countered very well by Sound Barrier. So there are certain games where I don't think High Five's always the pick, basically. I think there are definitely some games where Sound Barrier is where you won't get much use out of High Five.
And we tend to see, certainly in the CCL, that there's rarely CC light teams.
Yeah, CC is very strong. But there are still some games for that, for Sound Barrier. But the 20s, Generally, it's pretty much always mixing fire. I could see some argument for Summer Anthem. I've tried the talent. It just feels kind of weird to me. But I don't think it's necessarily bad. I think I'm just not used to it. I think it is pretty good with Sound Barrier because it lets you get it off before someone dies. If you do go Sound Barrier, the upgrade for Sound Barrier is also pretty good if the enemy has like very low cooldowns. And I would say in general, though, if I'm going to go high five, I'm generally defaulting to mixing fire because it's just generally good.
That's interesting with the sound barrier comments you made, that it's so good at catching one particular thing like that mouth heal. And that Bossa Nova upgrade makes perfect sense in that situation. More of like a Platinum League, Storm League situation where we're going, I think this is a fight. Bossa Nova's almost a downgrade in that way.
It can be, because the duration is decreased and you are kind of incentivized to use it more, but it does mean as long as your team's playing around it, you can just kind of rip it. And so it's not as big of a deal as long as you aren't just spamming it for no reason. There should be some reason to why you're pressing the button.
You mentioned all this wall riding, all this uptime. House Party doesn't seem bad with everything you're doing, particularly covering allies.
I don't think it's necessarily bad. I just don't think it's necessarily as good as the other options is the main thing. I don't think there's really a major reason to go it. I mean, if you're constantly around your team and maybe with like, a comp that really wants to clump, it could be really good. I don't know necessarily how much it truly affects the numbers because I haven't really done any major testing with it. So maybe it's stronger than I think, but I just haven't used it as much, I guess.
Yeah, tough to see coming in late in the game what a percent increase like that would even be. But you did out-heal the Stukov, and I am kind of curious about this because now we're in more of a low-blow world of Stukov. So when picking up something like mixing fire, were you less concerned now that Stukov's not quite the heal reset machine he was for the healing reduction?
In general, yes. I'm just less scared of Stukov now. I'm not sure how strong Stukov is in general, because he just got changed. I think people are trying things. They're learning new ways to play him because I think reactive was such a strong way that you kind of learned how to. You kind of forget how to play without it. So trying this new style, I think, is going to be hard for a lot of players, including myself. It's taking some getting used to. But I think Stukov, in general, it's like using mixing fire. I was generally not scared of his healing that much this game. I would agree with that statement.
Would you say that this 24,000 across this game is a pretty standard place for Lucio to be, or even lower than that?
Damage wise?
Yeah.
I mean, it depends. I was pretty freely allowed to hit this game. I wasn't under too much threat. It kind of just depends on the situation. Sometimes you can't play as far up or have to be a lot more scared, but I would say I'd say it's a decent amount of damage for this game. That's like, I wouldn't really be like, oh, I should have done more or less. I'd say probably fairly normal.
Awesome. Well, you certainly showed off a lot of cool moves. The Lucio was very, very well played this game. Any advice to anybody who wants to pick up Lucio for the first time outside of be annoying and practice?
I would say just mostly get used to wall riding. Don't always be on heal, even though sometimes it's like, oh, well, I want to be healing my allies. Sometimes it's just better to be movement speed for a little bit. Especially in combat, getting used to the idea. It's like, oh, we're running away or I'm trying to save someone. Sometimes movement speed's just better than heal because the heal isn't going to be enough to save them. And also because you're so slippery, you can use your health bar by tanking skill shots or, probably not CC generally, but like there are certain points in this game where I was trying to block Hanzo Qs so people could get out or just trying to block damage in general.
It's a very important point, particularly on a healer that's AoE healing.
Well, especially with Lucio, because you are so slippery, you can actually use your health bar. Like, as Malf, I'm not generally going to try to block too many things because it's a little more dangerous. But because the mobility, it generally works out well if you get used to it.
Interesting. Kind of eating Lily's lunch then there.
Yeah, it can be played in a similar way to that.
Perfect. Well, thank you for all the information. Thank you for the rundown. Good luck to you going forward. Thank you, everyone watching here at YouTube on the Heroes Heart channel. Be sure to like, subscribe, ring that bell for more Learn to Play content for Heroes of the Storm, but also, of course, the upcoming Season 3 of the CCL. See you soon.